Hi everybody, welcome along to episode 62 of Percussion Discussion. Hope you're all well out there. Please don't forget to check out our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course our world famous YouTube channel. If you would do me a massive favour and subscribe, it only takes a second. Be really grateful, and this means that you won't miss any of our upcoming episodes, of which there are some fantastic ones, and of course any of the ones that we've already done. If you prefer to listen to your conversations on the go, then all of our interviews are available in podcast form. You can find those on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. So if that's your thing, please check them out. And if you find you've got a few spare seconds, then please leave us a review as well. It all helps. Thanks. On to today's guest, a fantastic drummer who sadly we don't hear too much about these days. If you're from the Northwest, we see him luckily playing around and doing lots and lots of gigs with some incredible people. But over the years, he's played with some absolutely amazing bands and singers, including Joan Armatrading, Alvin Stardust, the Icicle Works, Gloria Gaynor, Jerry Donahue and the Helecasters. But he's probably best known for his work with the incredible 10cc. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome the lovely man that is Mr. Paul Burgess.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's great to see you. You've been on the list for some time, but we finally managed to line it up now, so this is great. And before we go any further, I have to thank our mutual friend Steve Barney for setting this up. So thank you, Steve.
Absolutely.
Another fine drummer. Great stuff. Yeah. So obviously it's been an interesting 18 or so months. Let's start where we are at the moment. Have you managed to keep busy? Have you been doing anything?
Last year was when things opened up a little. I was able to do a few studio things. And of course, we were allowed to do open air gigs at that point.
Yeah.
So I managed a handful of those. But then we had the next stage, and things ground to a halt again. But around about September, between August and November, I think, I managed 2 or 3 gigs actually indoor gigs.
Right. Okay.
And then the turn of the year, and then I've managed a few.
You managed to keep going. I mean, I know you playing some great bands. I mean, the names might not be too familiar to some people, but in the Northwest, I mean, Midnight Johnny is a hell of a guitarist and vocalist, isn't he? And I know you do quite a few with him.
Yeah. I mean, I've always had a regular local band.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, a regular 3 or 4 local bands.
Yeah.
Because when 10cc aren't active, then you need something to keep your hand in.
Sure, absolutely.
So Midnight Johnny is the most recent of a long list of bands, and I like playing with him. I like playing with the bass player. We work in a couple of other bands, and we have a really good rapport. A drummer has to have a good rapport with the bass player, or it doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've seen you a couple of times, and I've always been really impressed. Just, a good rapport musically, as well as, and I think that's probably what you're referring to anyway.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, we're almost, because we play a lot together, we're almost telepathic.
Yeah.
And that's a joy of it. If you're listening properly, then the music tells you what's happening, what's coming up, and working with a particular player for any length of time, you can anticipate what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So it's there's lots of really nice moments. You don't even have to look at each other, but you know something good's happened.
Absolutely. That's the ultimate when you get that relationship on stage, isn't it? And I think you make it very easy for well, in this case, Midnight Johnny, who's because I know sometimes there's keys in the lineup as well, but when you've got that kind of foundation, it makes it easy for him just to add the sparkles on the top, doesn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I always look at a gig like that as being pretty straightforward. You know, I mean, blues. You know, you have first and foremost, it's a feel. So you got to lay a good feel down, and then there's a time to play out, and there's a time to keep it simple. And usually the simple approach is better, I find.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, leave a bit.
And you instinctively know when to open up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, that's at the moment. We've got quite a bit of ground to cover. Can we, if you don't mind, can we go back to where it all kind of caught fire for you with drums and music in general, whichever was first?
Well, for me, it was I was 14. My folks had moved. I was born in Manchester, at Old Trafford, and around about the age of 5 or 6, my folks moved out of town, about 12 miles out, and my mum used to take me into Manchester on the bus. She'd go shopping and take me along, and I can always remember coming up Oxford Road in Manchester, and the bus would stop at the lights, and on to the left was Barrett's music shop, and in the window there was a revolving riser with the blue sparkle Premier kit, and I can remember that vividly as if it was yesterday, and so I was quite captivated by that. Roll forward a few years, and my mother was visiting a friend of hers and took me along. This friend had a son about my age, and as the women spoke, they said, "Well, why don't you go upstairs and play?" So we walked into this lad's bedroom, and there was a drum kit, a Broadway Blue Pearl, I think it was, and this is the first time I've actually seen a drum kit in the flesh. So I sat down and had a tap about on it, and it, well, to be frank, I was better than he was. I'd never even touched one before. So the seed was sown, and it wasn't long after that. I was living near Stockport, nearer to Stockport than Manchester, and there was a second-hand store that sold all sorts of stuff, records, tools, and a few musical instruments. And there was a blue sparkle, the bare bones of a drum kit. And I mentioned it to my mum, and she persuaded my dad to buy it for me. I think it was £18.50.
Wow.
For a bass drum and a snare drum and an 11-inch splash cymbal. That was it. Yeah. Oh, so that was age 15.
Yeah.
So that's how it started for me. And then of course I met a friend who played guitar, and he was into Bob Dylan. So the pair of us used to tap out Bob Dylan tunes together. Brilliant. And that's how it all started.
So, I mean, obviously, before you actually saw the drums, were you aware of certain drummers on radio, or, well, there was probably very little on TV at that time, wasn't there? Really, I'd imagine not a vast amount of music.
Not a great deal, no. Used to listen to the radio, Radio Luxembourg, the Saturday and Sunday programs on the BBC. Easy Beat, I seem to remember, and Keith Fordyce introduced one, and I think I can't remember the other guy. One was a Saturday, one was a Sunday, and I can remember the Johnny Howard Band was on one of them, and they used to play the pops of the day, and they'd have, you know, guest bands. So I was listening to pop music. I wasn't particularly aware of any individuals.
Yeah.
But that came later.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so obviously you're 15. You I don't know. Are you still in school at that point? I know. I left quite a young age, so
yeah, I was still at school. I might add that my mother's brother, my mother's brother-in-law, had been a post-war drummer, so she knew, you know, the joy that he had when he'd been playing. Yeah. So I think that's why she went with it, you know.
Yeah.
And my uncle did actually hand a few things down to me over the years, so that was a plus.
Have you still got any of it?
I have.
Oh, that's good.
There's a 20-inch ride cymbal with rivets.
Yeah.
I don't think it's any particular brand. I've got an Ajax Crash. I think those are pretty much the only. Oh, a pedal. I've got my very first pedal still, which is quite laughable when you look at it.
Yeah, when you look at the things of today, you know, and yeah, I mean, even like if you look at the Ludwig Speed King, which was, you know, this iconic thing, and I've got one, and it's horrible. I could never use it, and I'm sure I'll be shot down in flames for saying that. But you know, not for me.
I've not used mine for years. To be honest, I don't even know where they are. I've got about 3 of them. I keep meaning to dig them out and give them a try again.
Yeah, I'm sure it won't catch on with you, but you never know. You never know, do you? So
well, they were quite clanky, weren't we, with that metal link?
Yeah, and they used to wear out and just get even. Yeah, not for me. I'm afraid I've got friends who use them, but no, not for me. But so 15. Did you? I'm assuming a full band came along next, Paul. Did it? That's the normal thing once you've got a couple of you.
Yeah, we met a couple of other chaps, and we used to rehearse in one of their houses. I think the very first gig that we did was actually I think it was a fundraiser for firemen, and it was held at a Catholic school in a place called Glossop. Mm-hmm. And we were on with. We were on also. There was a dance band or something. Yeah. I seem to remember. Actually, I've got a poster of it somewhere.
Oh, brilliant!
The things you keep.
Well, it's nice. It's nice. It's all part of your history, isn't it? You know, nice to keep these things. I think. So.
Yeah. So we started doing a few gigs, and and then I got poached by another band, which was a blues band. Mm-hmm. And they were into John Mayall. Cream were out at that time. Jimi Hendrix was on the scene. So we were doing all that sort of stuff. Canned Heat, Duster Bennett. And off we went.
Was Ginger Baker ever an influence to yourself?
I can't say he was, no.
Yeah. He's
no. I mean, I used to like what he did very much. Yeah. Keith Moon as well. I mean, Keith Moon was a one-off. He really was. Yeah. But that wasn't really my style.
Yeah. Who, if you could name one or two of the era, who would you say was the biggest influence on yourself? You know, one or two. It doesn't have to be just one.
Well, I mean, the stuff I was listening to, the Hollies. So we had Bobby Elliott, Ringo, of course. The Shadows at that time would have been Tony Meehan.
Yes, pre-Brian Bennett.
Later Brian Bennett. So I was listening to all those guys. And then there were a few. I mean, I found out in more recent years who was in a lot of these bands. So there were people who I followed later on. And I didn't realize that they were in the bands that they were back then.
Sure.
But the whole thing was a melting pot. You know, you'd hear something off one drummer and you'd think, oh, I like that, and you'd pinch that idea. So they all had their own trademark things.
Yeah.
So you could, everybody was listening to the same drummers,
yeah.
But the way they nicked bits off them and put them together was everybody did it differently.
Yeah.
So that's how you get your own style.
Exactly. That's the way it'll always be as well. You know, and I think it's there for that reason, to pass it on and, you know, adapt it, mold it, make it your own. And the next person will do the same. So, yeah.
And of course, we didn't have access to, you know, videos like we do these days. So you were listening, you know, you'd hear something and you'd try and play it as you thought it would be played. If you were really lucky, you got to see that player live, and then you'd see how they really did it.
Yeah, yeah.
So you get the same result, but you might be using different sticking. But the way they did it might, you know, as soon as you see it, you think that's a lot easier than the way I'm doing it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, but you know, youngsters of this era do not know how lucky they are having YouTube and let's just rewind that. Let's have a look. You know, it's everything's at the fingertips now. You know, even when I was, you know, growing up, I had vinyl, and trying to rewind vinyl to trying to find it's, you know, oh, what's that, Phil? You've got to listen to the whole song again.
Yeah.
They've got it easy now.
I have a very steady hand with the needle.
Yes, yeah, I didn't. So speaking of recordings, where was your first experience of recording?
That would have been with the second band I mentioned. Mm-hmm. As we developed, we had a manager who worked for Granada. He was a cameraman at Granada Studios, TV studios, and he got us a session actually at Strawberry Studios in Stockport, which was in its infancy at that point. I think it was just a 4-track studio. Okay. So that was my first time in a studio. And I suppose at the time that was quite high up the scale. You know, even though it hadn't developed into the fantastic place it will become.
And it's kind of a very relevant place for you as well, isn't it? You know, it's
yes.
There's lots of things that's happened there, and well, obviously you're going to tell us about that anyway.
well, yes. As time went on, and I started playing with other bands, and they'd get sessions in Strawberry, so I'd be seeing the same faces, you know, and I'd get to know people at the studio. And people I see to this day, I first met in Strawberry. There was a drummer I ran into a couple of weeks ago, and he used to come down from Newcastle with a bunch of guys, and they used to do BBC sessions.
Right.
Yeah, it was a really good social scene as well, you know, because you'd hang around, you'd chat to these people. And everybody was, I don't know what it is with drummers. They're very giving, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, they'll share. Yeah. Guitar players tend to be a bit more protective.
Very. Oh, but you know, I mean, and the thing is with Strawberry, it was iconic, wasn't it? It really was.
Yes, yeah. Well, it was the first really good quality studio outside of London.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it was always in Eric Stewart's mind that he wanted to compete with, you know, the studios down there. Yeah. Because he was in and out of those places all the time with the Mindbenders.
Yeah, of course.
And he got the recording bug.
Yeah.
So he wanted to know things from the engineering side, and then of course it became production. Yeah.
So you did a lot. Did you? Were you like were you like a session player there at all? Would they say, oh, we need drums on this, let's give Paul a ring and he'll put
I wasn't so much a session player. It was more, yeah, in a way, I guess it was, but it was whoever needed a drummer. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't right. We have to have a drummer, right? Here's the book. We'll book him. It was, well, who do we know? And it was often people that I played with anyway.
Yeah, of course, but it still equates to the same thing in my book. That's, you know, you're coming in and playing a session for somebody. That's
yeah.
So how long is it before you meet the guys from 10cc then? From this point?
Well, it was on one of the sessions I got drafted in for. It was a Graham Gouldman song. I can't remember who the artist was, but I think Graham was producing it. Eric was the engineer. So I met the pair of them at the same time, and rolled forward about 2 or 3 years when 10cc were making their first album and thinking of going on the road. They knew they wanted an extra pair of hands, and they thought of me. So I got the call.
Wow.
But before 10cc, they were called Hot Legs.
Oh, okay.
They had a hit called Neanderthal Man. So Hot Legs was really the in-house band at Strawberry. Yeah. So that was Kevin Godley, Lol Cream, and Eric Stewart. And they did a tour, a short tour supporting the Moody Blues. And they had Graham Gouldman as the hired bass player. And so that's how the four of them got together. Right. And that became 10cc.
Wow. Okay. It's interesting the things you get when you when you speak to the actual people, you get to know all these things. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
So for the first tour then, were you I don't know, what would you describe it as, an auxiliary?
Exactly.
You were jumping instrument to instrument, maybe?
Initially it was drums, but the idea was that sometimes we play double drums. Yeah. Sometimes one will play kit, the other will play percussion. I sort of branched into keyboards a little bit, as and when it was needed. But I think towards the end of my time with the original lineup, I was only playing drums on about maybe four or five songs. Yeah. The rest of it was percussion or bit of keyboards.
Sure.
But it was really just having that extra pair of hands.
Yeah. Obviously, 10cc known for incredible vocal quality and harmony, and it sets them apart from a lot of other bands of the time. Do you ever contribute to that vocally?
No. You wouldn't want to hear me sing.
But it must have been a treat to be part of hearing that on stage, because it's got a warmth to it that's, you can think of a few names: Beach Boys, Beatles, 10cc is always up there with them for me. For
I mean, to put it into perspective, it was quite rough and ready back in the day.
Okay.
But then it was only as time went on that everything became a lot smoother. Equipment, the quality of equipment got so much better. Everything changed. So, I mean, you often look back at the bands of the day, and you think actually it wasn't. It was a bit ragged around the edges. And sometimes I must say 10cc could have been a bit like that.
Yeah.
But they had they did have an edge over quite a few others.
Yeah. It's there for everyone to hear, and it's spine tingling, some of those harmonies. They really are. So you mentioned double drums, quite the thing of the 70s, wasn't it, really? I suppose in certain areas. Did you enjoy that?
Even with Hot Legs, they drafted in another drummer, a good friend of mine, and I think they also drafted in a keyboard player. But yes, it was quite a common thing, a lot more common than you think. The Americans had the Allman Brothers, Doobie Brothers, Frank Zappa, of course, was doing it.
Yeah,
lots of them.
James Brown.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And over here, there was people like Stack Waddy, the Glitter Band.
Yeah, absolutely.
More common than you think.
And then Adam and the Ants, of course, carried it on in the 80s.
He did. He did. Yeah.
I tell you what, did you enjoy doing double drums? It's a challenge, isn't it? It must be.
It fell into place really well with Kevin, because Kevin Godley is an excellent timekeeper.
Yeah,
he's solid as a rock. He's very economical with his fills, but when he plays one, it's very tasty.
Yeah.
You know, nothing flash, often unexpected, but a very tasteful player.
Yeah.
So I was able to embellish on that. You see, he played the straight stuff, and I was able to play out a bit.
Yeah.
And of course, it was a lot of overdubs, where he played overdubs in the studio.
Yeah.
Tom overdubs and things like that. That was the sort of stuff I was doing.
Right. Okay. So it would come together live, and you'd play perhaps the overdubbed parts or something live.
Yeah.
That makes
some sense. Of the time we just play unison. I think that maybe only happened in a couple of tunes.
Yeah.
But most of the time it was complementary stuff.
And I always think that if you're playing double drums, listening is a huge part. It's trying to avoid flamming snare drums and things. That must be the worst nightmare, I suppose, having a blup, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and obviously, you know, a couple of members, including Kevin, departed. And I guess that you were the obvious choice then to take his place, were you? I know there was
the other two decided to carry on and give it a go.
Yeah.
It was an unknown quantity, really. And they put it to me that they were going to do another album. Would I be interested in being on board? Which, of course, I was.
Of course.
And that was Deceptive Bends, which was a success. All round, you know.
Incredible album. And do you know, I still to this day love the album cover. It's unusual. And it's just really, I just love it. I just think it's a fantastic album cover as well. It really is, as well as a great album, you know, with some great songs on there.
The people who designed that, Hypnosis, they obviously came up with the bends.
Yes.
Affiliated with deep sea diving.
Yeah.
But the name actually the working title came from a sign on the, I think it was the A24 that goes in toward Dorking from Leatherhead.
Right.
And Deceptive Bends.
Oh, so it's actually nothing to do with the deep sea diver with the helmet and everything.
No, the working title was derived from the road sign.
Brilliant.
Which Graham Gulman used to pass every day. He'd rented a place in town in London.
Yeah.
And so he'd pass this sign every day on his way to Dorking.
Yeah. Fantastic. Oh, that's lovely. Oh, I see. This is why I like doing these interviews, when you get these little nuggets that you wouldn't perhaps normally hear or find out about, it's just brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, and the album is full of just great material. I mean, I think Good Morning Judge is it's just a fabulous song. It's a great groove to that. Did you play on all of the songs on it, Paul?
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, Good Morning Judge was the first. In fact, somewhere I have an acetate without the vocal.
Really?
Because, well, the studio was an unknown quantity as well, because before Kevin Lowell left, they'd all invested in this new studio.
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally being built as we were doing that album.
Yeah, sure.
They bought an old cinema, I think it'd been a cinema, and gutted the whole building and built a building within a building. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was a building site. Apart from the control room and the actual studio, you walked out of the control room door and there was no reception. It was still being built.
Wow.
So yeah, it was pioneering days, really.
Well,
so they didn't know what the finished result was going to be. They didn't know how it was going to sound recording wise. So they did a few test recordings. Good Morning Judge being one. They did a test pressing to see how it was going to sound pressed up, and off we went.
The results are pretty astounding, aren't they? Let's be honest. I mean, I know that there was 2 or 3 hits on that. Obviously, Things We Do for Love is the, I guess that that charted the highest, I'm assuming.
I think that was the biggest seller in America.
Yeah. It's a great song. I mean, you listen to that and it's hard to pigeonhole what kind of band it is. Is it pop? Is it rock? Is a little bit of progressive rock at certain times of it when I hear it, but I don't know. What would you describe it as? Where would you?
Well, the original 4 in the band, it was 2 factions that made it a success, because there was the commercial side, which was Eric and Graham, who were used to making pop records, and the 2 art students, the gung-ho art students who'd try anything. Yeah. You know, they were from the Frank Zappa school, you know.
Yeah, anything goes.
So you got the outrageous side and you got the sensible side, put them together, and that was a melting pot. And the 2 sides needed each other, because the commercial side needed a bit of a kick up the pants.
Yeah.
You know, be a bit more adventurous.
Yeah.
And the outrageous side needed reining in. So what that halfway point was the whole success of it.
It was a match made in heaven, wasn't it? And musically, it just everything worked, everything gelled, and you know, different styles within one album as well. And I just think it was, you know, it sounds like a breath of fresh air. Obviously, I don't remember it. I was 3 when it came out, but I heard it plenty of times since, and even now I can listen and go, yeah, this is fantastic, and it really is. And you know, I love the drum sounds on it. That is a 70s drum sound, but it's so good with it. You know, everything sounds lovely on it. So
they had quite a strange way of working, which was totally alien to me. They'd go for the drum track first. Mm-hmm. So whatever the song was written on, either guitar or piano, that will be the guide track, and I'd have to play to that and come up with whatever I came up with.
Yeah, sure.
So there was no bass. You know, I couldn't follow a bass line.
Wow.
So really, it was the drum parts were my invention, I guess. Yeah. Which I feel really proud of. Mm. And also, I would come up with something that maybe the writer hadn't thought of. You know, they maybe had something in mind, but you know, when they hear something different, they either think, yes, we like it better than our idea, or sort of steer me back towards their way of thinking.
Yeah.
So they did that just to get a drum track.
So obviously, I'm assuming that the guide whatever it was played on would have been played to click at that point, or some kind of.
No,
Oh no,
no,
that's tough.
no. We didn't have clicks then.
Wow. So you had to move wherever the instrument moved, basically.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, they were good quality players, so
of course.
They had good time.
Mm.
They had good time.
Wow, that's.
But it was a strange way of working, very strange for me.
Yeah.
Graham Gouldman always used to say he wanted to know what the drums were going to play before he put his bass line on.
Wow.
And of course, inevitably, when I heard what he put on, I would think, if I'd have known he was going to do that, I would have done something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in a way, there were a few disappointments, shall we say. You know, the thing didn't turn out quite the way I would have. It could have been better from my perspective.
But
I think there was one time when I got to re-record one of the basic tracks to a bass line that was already there. Yeah. But that was just a one-off.
But as you say, it's such an unusual way of doing it. You're kind of thrown in the deep end, and come out with a result when you don't know what else is. It's really unusual, isn't it? Really and difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, nothing was set in stone. You know, we tried different kits. I think at the time I may have had three or four kits.
Yeah.
Although the main one that we used was the Ludwig that I'd been touring with.
Mm.
But I remember I went out one day when I wasn't needed. I went to I think I went over to Guildford one day and just used to go to the music stores. And I was in a village called Esher, a tiny music store. And I walked in and there was a little Gretsch kit. And I thought, I love that kit. Little Rosewood 18, 12, 14. And I went away and thought about it. Next day I went back and bought it. So I got it back to the studio and oh, what's that? What's that little thing?
Yeah.
Should we give it a try? We'll try it on the next track.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was. Nothing was set in stone.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's nice to have that flexibility, isn't it? And
yeah.
I mean, so obviously you had a good spell then with the band, and then you went your separate ways, sort of early 80s. Have I got that right?
Yes. Well, yeah, things went a bit sour. Eric Stewart had a bad car crash.
Yeah.
For a start, and he was out of action for about a year. And as he recovered sufficiently to work again, he did a couple of his own projects. Graham did a couple of his projects as well, which I was involved in.
Yeah.
But when we came back together, punk had arrived.
Mm-hmm. So
it was like starting again.
Yeah.
It really was. Nobody wanted to know.
No.
So it was that was beginning of the end, really.
Yeah, sure.
And Eric changed somewhat. He was quite argumentative, objectionable. It wasn't good. And the last tour I did, I think, was 83. And it was Eric and Graham who hired 4 of us. And I said to the other 3, this is not good. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
And they all agreed. And then, of course, come the end of the tour, the next tour came up and they all said, yeah, I'll do it. So I was a rat who deserted the sinking ship.
Yeah, I'm sure that's been said many times about different bands over the years, but
yeah,
well, I mean, through the 80s, some of the names I've got written here, Elkie Brooks, Alvin Stardust, Gloria Gaynor, and there's one in particular that caught my eye, and that's Joan Armatrading. who I'm a fan of. I think she's an incredible talent. Did you do a tour with Joan? Have I got that correct?
I did. Well, yes, I seem to have a different employer every year. 85 was Elkie.
Yeah.
And at one point we had a bass player come in, a guy called Jeremy Meek. And
yes,
that's right.
Yes.
And the following year, he was with Joan Armatrading, and she needed a drummer, and he recommended me.
Wow!
So that's how that came about.
I
didn't record with her.
No, but would that have been the Sleight of Hand tour that you did that year?
Yes.
Oh, because that's a great album. There's some great songs on there.
I think Mel Gaynor, he played most of the tracks, I think. Yeah. I can't think who else might have been on it.
There's a song called Kind Words and a Good Heart. I don't know. It's such a great song. I mean, I think she's fantastic. I think maybe a little bit Marmite to some people, but I think she is just incredible.
Yeah.
Do. And great back catalogue of stuff as well. So
yeah. Well, she had a bit of a tradition of changing her band fairly frequently.
Sure.
So that she could get different input from people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So things didn't get too set in their ways.
Yeah. And I mean, you're kind of a musical chameleon, really. You just seem to fit in whatever's put your way. Icicle Works is there, obviously, but Jerry Donahue, that's a name that fantastic. How did that come about?
A few years prior to that, I'm trying to think, maybe about 1981. I happened to pop into Strawberry one day to pick up some equipment, and there were some guys there who were discussing a forthcoming album. The band was Magna Carta.
Okay.
And as I walked through the door, somebody said, "Well, he's a drummer." So suddenly I had an album to do.
Right. Okay.
And I worked with Magna Carta quite a bit in the years that followed.
Yeah.
And the guitar player, Doug Mortar, had teamed up with Jerry Donahue. He knew Jerry from Fairport Convention.
Yeah, of course.
And they had a band called the Backroom Boys, which had Jerry Conway on drums. And then there came a time when Jerry couldn't do it. And so I came into the fold that way.
Fantastic. Just, I'm an incredible guitarist, isn't he? Let's be honest.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for me, that culminated with some gigs with an American band he had, the Helecasters.
Is it John Jorgensen?
Three American guitar players.
Was John Jorgensen one of them? Have I got that right?
John Jorgensen and Will Ray.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. That must have been a treat.
And yes, I did a handful of gigs with them, which was probably, I'd regard that as a bit of a highlight of my career.
I can well believe it. I mean, and your career, to be fair, it's there's never kind of been, well, obviously there's been a few lulls probably, but it's been pretty constant, hasn't it? You've never been sat around twiddling your thumbs, from what I can work out,
Well, because I've ducked and dived between styles. I mean, I've done a lot with folk rockers, which is really where Jerry came from. The Fairport.
Yeah.
Although he was considered a country guitar player.
Yeah.
So a lot of these people duck and dive, and yes, it's a forever changing scene.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the way to make it, surely, as a professional musician. Have, just be prepared to play everything. I guess that's a lot of drummers I've spoken to and I've said, have you got any advice for young aspiring drummers? Take every gig, play everything, and I'm sure you'd say exactly the same. I guess.
Yeah. I've always, like I said before, when I'm not out on tour, I've got to be doing something.
Yeah, sure.
I'd rather be down the local pub doing a gig than sitting at home watching the rubbish on TV.
Yeah, I think we're all the same there. But so obviously, it's difficult trying to fit, a career such as yours into a 45-minute interview. But I sort of picked on a few things that that interest me personally, rather selfishly. But and as far as 10cc goes, is there anything in the pipeline for the next year or so that you can share with us?
Well, everything that's been rescheduled, basically.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't think there's going to be enough months next year.
Yeah, or venues.
We've got a European tour, all being well, starting at the end of October.
Yeah. Oh,
so that was rescheduled from April 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And then British dates will come next year.
Good.
We usually do we do a city tour and we do a provincial tour.
Yeah.
Usually one is the city tour usually comes up in around about April, and then the longer one is about October.
Yeah, well, I've seen you in the Pavilion Theatre in Rill before now, so
oh right, a
few years ago. That was a great show. So I shall look forward to the next one, hopefully. And
good.
Look, Paul, thank you so much for giving your time up so generously. I really appreciate it. I know you've had a crazy few weeks, haven't you, gigging and what have you? So it's good to hear. Yeah.
I'm actually nursing a sprained arm at the moment. It's taking its time to heal, but
not ideal for a drummer. But there we are.
But I should really be doing bits, quite a few local things just to build up the strength before 10cc starts up again.
Of course. Well, look, thank you so much. I say really appreciate it, and I know lots of people who'll be watching this will appreciate it as well. So it's very kind of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Take care and see you soon.
Cheers.
Bye bye now.
Bye.